with authority.
Welcome to another edition of our With Authority quarantine series. Larry Beal, Casey Pratt, Chris Alvarez. Special guest is the general manager of the San Francisco Giants, Scott Harris. So we welcome you. Where are you right now, Scott?
I am holed up in my apartment in San Francisco. What about you guys?
We're all in our homes. When was the last time you exited your premises?
Yesterday, briefly.
Okay. I'm proud of you. You got outside.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's our pleasure to have you. So I'm just going to dive right into this here, and you can, bob and weave however you want. There's about 101 proposals on how the baseball season should start up. Given your background in economics, business, analytics, I have this vision of you with a dozen computers running simulations on if we do this, if we do that, if we go to the biosphere, if we go 3 Division 10 teams. Is that how you're spending your time?
Yeah, I think the commissioner did a great job of articulating all of those concepts as more ideas than plans. A part of our job, part of my job, Farhan's job, Gabe's job is just to forecast changes in our sport and to be ready for them. So we've been occupying a lot of our days coming up with contingency plans, trying to forecast the changes that our sport will see, but also try to make sure that we're prepared to exploit any potential new loopholes or any ways to give the Giants a competitive advantage once we do get back on the field.
I'll jump right in then. I read your Reddit AMA. I was doing some deep research on you. I read about the time, though, that you and Gabe Kapler got to meet Willie Mays. So can you tell us a little bit about what that was like? Because I know that was probably a really significant and cool moment for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was a really special moment. In this job, you often get to check off items on your bucket list that you never would have access to in any other profession. And I got to check one of those off pretty early in my tenure with the Giants. Right before we left for spring training, I was down in Gabe's office in the clubhouse, and someone came by and said that Willie Mays was going to pop by the clubhouse to come meet us. And Gabe and I were giddy in his office as we were about to exit his office and go into the room that Willie was in. And right before we walked in, Gabe turned to me and he said, "Hey, this is big. This is like, meeting Babe Ruth." And I turned to him and I was like, "Gabe, Willie was so much better than Babe Ruth. This isn't even close." We both we agreed that Willie is in an upper echelon of baseball greats above Babe Ruth, and then we got to go have that pinch me moment of actually shaking his hand and realizing how big his hands actually are. You always hear the stories about how Willie's handshake is the best handshake that you could ever ask for. I know Gabe's talked about that a bunch, and it's absolutely true. And it was the ultimate pinch me moment to get to meet Willie Mays up close and personal.
Speaking of other people that you may have gotten to get acquainted with a little bit, have you been able to kind of pick the brain of a Bruce Bochy or Brian Sabean in your time with the Giants so far? I know that it's kind of like a baseball-rich environment with all the people that they keep around that organization.
Yeah, it's such a privilege to be in this organization. I felt like every day I went to work in spring training, I would bump into someone new that was a legend in our sport. Guys like Bochy, who's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and Sabes. They've been very welcoming to me and to Gabe and to Farhan, and it's great. My office in spring training is right next to Sabe's office, and so I would pop in periodically during games and pick his brain about some of the players that he acquired and brought into this organization and how they really developed into the players and the people that they are today. So it's been a really cool experience, and I've been trying to make the most of it and learn from their experiences in this game.
Larry actually joked with me off camera that he asked me my age, and I'm a couple years older than you, so I'm a little behind in life. You're at such a high position where you're at your age. Your trajectory. I mean, how did you get to where you are, and now you're the general manager of the Giants? I'm assuming that was your team growing up as well.
Yeah, it's I think everyone who comes into a job like this has a unique career path to getting here. Mine started by not knowing anyone in this game at all. And so I just took pen to paper and started writing letters to every GM and president in this game when I was in college. and try to convince them that I was young, bright, and willing to work for, in some cases, $0 just to try to get my foot in the door and try to build a career in baseball. I got a few lucky breaks along the way, met some key figures who have become mentors in my life, such as Al Rosen, who's a former GM of the Giants, Theo Epstein, Jed Hoyer, and they really opened countless doors to me and made this trajectory possible. And I'm just really excited to be back in San Francisco and feel real fortunate to have the opportunity to build a winner in my hometown.
That being said, it's been a roller coaster of a ride. I mean, this is done like we should be in the middle of a season right now. So what has been your months that you know, from being hired to where we are today?
Yeah, I think people forget how new I am and Gabe is, and even Farhan. You know, Gabe and I have been here for a few months, and Farhan hasn't been here that much longer. But it's really challenging when you move into a new organization, especially when you've been in one place for a long time, like I was in Chicago. You're getting to know new faces. You're trying to forge relationships with a new subset of players, and it's really challenging. And then all of a sudden you throw a global pandemic on top of it, and it becomes pretty close to impossible. But I've been really proud of the efforts of our staff and our guys' ability to confront the challenge head on, to first and foremost take care of their families, but also find new ways to seek out competitive advantages and seek out new ways to push us forward when we finally do get to play again.
For people that may not be familiar with your background, I just want to go over the resume really quick because you are a Bay Area product. Redwood City, Menlo School, UCLA, got an economics degree at UCLA. You went to Columbia Business School, the London School of Economics. This is very highbrow stuff here. So I'm wondering what the reaction was from your parents when you said, yeah, all that business stuff, I want to run a baseball team. What was the reaction?
Well, it's not quite as highbrow as you articulated it, because I did drop out of Columbia Business School to take the job with the Cubs. So I didn't quite finish all of that. I ended up finishing business school at Northwestern in Chicago. But I guess everything's relative, because my parents are both doctors, and they are actively trivializing everything I'm doing in the baseball world by everything they're doing in the medical world. So I still feel like, despite what I've accomplished at this age, it still pales in comparison to what my parents have done and how they raised me.
Just out of curiosity, are either of them dealing with coronavirus in a frontline way or doing research in any way connected with COVID-19?
Yeah, so they actually both retired recently. My mom is still working at Stanford Medical School, and my dad just recently finished work at the Valley Medical Center. But they're both standing by in case our public health situation dictates that they need some additional help. But I think it's worth mentioning that we should all be very proud of the way this region has responded to the coronavirus. I think, the Bay Area is certainly an outlier relative to other regions in this country and in the world. And I think it's a lot to be proud of here, but we got to continue to social distance. We got to continue to stay home, and we got to continue to take this threat seriously so that we can stomp it out once and for all and get back to baseball as soon as possible.
Staying on that topic a little bit, I mean, how much has this been a major challenge organizationally? I know that you have to prepare for a draft. You have to prepare for a season if and when it comes. So what are you guys doing to stay on top of all that? How are you scouting players? How are you managing the pipeline with games that are not going to be played? And what exactly have you been doing technologically to kind of ease all of that?
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge. We've been doing a few things. Typically in these jobs, the day-to-day grind of spring training and the regular season often disrupts efforts to explore new competitive advantages, identify ways that we can get better in certain aspects of our operation, and then also identify ways to apply it across the organization. And so specifically, some competitive advantages take thousands of hours of work to really explore and apply to our operation. And a lot of times, some of the domain experts, like our pitching coaches or major league hitting coaches, they just don't have time during the everyday schedule of the regular season to apply themselves to this work. So Farhan, Gabe, and I are really focusing on some deep work projects that we think have a chance to create real sustainable competitive advantages. And we're looking forward to coming together as a staff to really dig into those and make sure that we can apply them as soon as our sport gets back on track. I think additionally, one new cool way that we are applying ourselves, and more specifically Gabe and the Major League coaching staff, are launching a new initiative with the Junior Giants at Home program. Gabe and his coaches are recording new instructional videos for Junior Giants so that they can set up and conduct baseball-specific drills at their house with just household supplies. So, for instance, our bench coach, Kai Correa, just finished recording a new infield instructional video where he teaches kids how to create an infielder's glove out of a sheet of cardboard. And then he walks them through some of the same drills that he walks, current Giants, Brandon Crawford and Mauricio Dubon through, and really teaches them the fundamentals of fielding a ground ball at the major league level. So it's just another cool way that, our creative coaching staff can apply themselves and to use our platform to promote the greater good in our community.
God, that sounds like an interesting story. I want to follow up with you off camera about that because I might want to do something with it after. But Gabe Kapler, when you hired him, why was he the guy? I mean, everyone wants this job. There's a lot of people that are candidates, but why was Gabe the guy in your guys' mind?
Yeah, I think for us, what has been really exciting is to see Gabe get out in the community and connect with fans, because I think we know Gabe on a different level than most of the fans and the rest of the baseball world know him. But it was very clear in the interview process how Gabe takes a really creative approach to problem solving. He is very intentional in the drill work he does with players, and he really believes in efficient, targeted work and getting players in on the field, get their work in, and then get them off the field so that they can recover. And then also one thing that I really noticed in spring training that is a huge asset for Gabe is I think we don't give him enough credit for the set of experiences that he has in this game. He came from a 57th round pick who worked his way into one of the best prospects in all of baseball, and then he had a huge major league debut in Detroit where they gave him Kirk Gibson's number, and then he had some struggles at the major league level. He had to go back down to the minor leagues and work on some things. He ended up going to Asia and playing in Japan for a little bit, and so it was fun for Farhan and I to watch him interact with players from different backgrounds and find ways to identify with players through his own career and his set of experiences, both as a player and as a manager in the minor leagues and the big leagues, and then also as a director of player development too. So he's an exceptionally versatile manager for us. We think he's a really gifted tactician in the dugout, and we've seen firsthand how he can find creative new ways to help players get better, even in the midst of a global pandemic.
He actually joined us on a previous podcast and talked a little bit about varied experiences that he has had as coming in as the guy and then kind of declining and then resurging. And so he's been all over the map and can relate to a lot of different players. Do you have a sense as to how many games you will or need to play to make this season meaningful? Like, do you have in the back of your mind a startup date that is sort of do or die?
I don't. We have plenty of time to think about this, and I think we're focused on trying to apply ourselves to productive work instead of spinning our wheels. I mean, you mentioned earlier about having a bunch of computer screens and modeling out when a start date could happen. I'm going to leave that to the experts in New York, the public health officials who are advising Major League Baseball and the commissioner and his staff. I really trust them. I think they're a very talented group of officials out there, and I know that they're exploring every possible idea to get us back and started. But I do think it's really important for us to wait for the public health situation to improve and to make sure that we're listening to the public health officials who are trained experts in this regard, and wait for them to grant permission for us to get back on the field. Because I think, we have to maintain some proper perspective in this environment. And we also have to be conscious that we as a sport aren't going to divert any resources away from hospitals or first responders who are the real heroes in all of this, and they're doing the work that's going to allow us to eventually play baseball. So I think if we stay disciplined and we stay the course, we're eventually going to play baseball. And I think, at this point, any game is going to be a welcome sight. And so hopefully we can play as many as we can this season and get back to the playoffs.
I know that you are big on analytics. At least that's how you've been branded. Maybe that's because you got all these degrees and things from all these fancy schools. But so I just thought randomly, we hear so much today: spin rate, launch angle, exit velocity, and those are just the simple ones. Do you have a favorite stat that you look at that you go, oh, look at that the rest of us would say, what is Scott talking about? What is he looking at?
Sure, but I probably shouldn't share it with you guys,
Nobody watches these podcasts. Don't worry about it.
No, I think it's an oversimplification to hone in on one stat as sort of the a comprehensive measure of a player's value. I think we're trying to build a full roster, and we're trying to create a collection of players that produce value that's greater than the sum of their parts. And so I think if we can give Gabe a set of players who specialize in certain situations and allow him to deploy them in the optimal situations, then we're all going to be better for it. I do think that we have done a lot of work recently on trying to identify latent ability and trying to identify potential for adjustments for players. And there are some stats that we look to identify potential for adjustment moving forward. But there's also the traditional scouting eye that is incredibly valuable for us. And we really lean heavily on our scouts to draw from their set of experiences and identify players who are on the cusp of taking their game to the next level and can create a ton of surplus value for us moving forward. So it isn't all stats. A lot of it is medical. A lot of it is scouting. Our scouting looks and trusting our evaluators' experience. And then, once we put all that information together, we try to make the best possible decision for the Giants.
I got to say, for a young guy, you were really good at dodging my questions. I'm asking you when the season's going to start, and you give me like a minute answer that really doesn't tell me what I asked. And then I want you to give me a spin rate or, launch angle, and another very good answer, but not what I asked. And this is very, very impressive. Stuff
Thank you. It's usually more effective when they don't identify it in the interview.
No, I totally get it, but it's fun nonetheless. Anyway, Casey.
I wanted to ask, speaking of analytics, crunching numbers, running data, what do you think that the big change at Oracle Park is going to do with right field and the way that they're moving the bullpen, et cetera? I mean, is that something that you think is really going to help power numbers? Is that something that's going to benefit your team, or is it going to benefit both teams equally? What are you guys thinking in terms of what you're going to see come from that change in right field?
Yeah, so we're moving the fence in center field about 8 feet, and that's going to obviously have an effect on Triples Alley too. We have run some studies to forecast the effect of moving the fences in. I think an underrated impact that you're going to see once we're back to playing baseball is a positive effect on the psyche of our hitters. I think it is, anyone who's been around a major league team on a day-to-day basis notices the mental grind that these hitters face day in and day out, and that's amplified by some challenging environments for hitters in our game. And so, the Giants, who have been here for a long time, the Crawfords, the Belts, the Posies, they know what it feels like when you drive a ball to dead center field and you really feel like you got it and it dies on the warning track. So I think just a couple of those going out is going to have a positive psychological impact on these hitters and give them a little more confidence at the plate, because anyone who's played the game can tell you that confidence at the plate is invaluable, especially over the grind of a 6-month season.
What do you think about, in terms of changes, the way the game is going to look when it comes back? I would imagine there's going to be no fans. I would imagine that there might be robot umpires. Is that a possibility? What are you seeing in the way that the game may look to us once it resumes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading the same ideas out there as you guys are about ways that we may tweak the game when we get back. There aren't any concrete tweaks that we can report right now. We certainly talked about a lot of them. I think the biggest impact is going to be the potential to have having no fans, and I think we have two players on our roster right now who have plenty of experience with that, and Jeff Samardzija and Kevin Gausman, who both played in that game in Baltimore a couple of years ago when they shut Camden Yards down and didn't allow any fans in there. And so they have some pretty funny stories about how the game changes and how even, their interaction with their teammates changes when the sounds aren't drowned out by the fans out there. And I even heard one rumor of their ability to hear the broadcasters announcing the game while they're playing in the game, because there's no buffer of the fans in the stands anymore. So, we're going to be ready. We're going to stay nimble. We're going to be able to respond to any changes that are coming on the horizon. And we're just excited to play baseball whenever we can.
Scott, Casey's a lifelong A's fan, so he's used to the concept of no fans in a park.
No comment on that one.
That is brutal.
I know.
You can make me feel better, though, by actually engaging in some more deals with the A's. I know that Farhan came from there, too. The Giants and A's, for the longest time, wouldn't make any trades. I mean, how does that help your competitive advantage if you're not –
We just made one.
Yeah, I saw that. It was the first one in a long time.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so maybe they're more on the horizon.
Ooh.
Scott, realistically, how much time do you guys need in an abbreviated spring training to get ready to play Major League Baseball games that count for wins and losses? Do you guys have an idea? Is there an ideal time? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, month?
It's an excellent question. This is uncharted territory for us. We've never experienced anything close to something like this. So we've been talking with Gabe, with Andrew Bailey, our pitching coach, and with our hitting coaches to try to imagine what a ramp up could look like. But until we have a start date for the season, I don't think we can actually accurately predict how much time we're going to need to get right. And also, I think there's some sense in the game that we may not have a lot of choice. If we can play baseball, I think all parties involved have incentives that are aligned here. We just want to play as many games as possible, and that means that we're going to have a shortened ramp up period, and it's just on us to find the most efficient and effective way to use the time that we're allotted.
I was there in February for a couple of days, right when you guys kind of ramped up and started right before the games. And the vibe I got is what you mentioned about Gabe, is the in and out, the energy was there. Obviously, it's a new Bochy's a legend, so it's just something different. But what was the vibe that you got in the front office and the team was having entering 2020 before everything got shut down?
Yeah, it feels like spring training was so long ago. It's unbelievable. If I remember back to spring training, what sticks out to me is I was really impressed by the coaches and the players. The coaches, as we talked about, they brought energy and enthusiasm to work every day. They designed a very efficient schedule for the players, and they came up with new creative drills that the players hadn't participated in before, and so that brought a new level of excitement to our camp. And I think the players really fed off of it. I was really impressed by the players' work. Players like Brandon Crawford and Buster Posey and Hunter Pence and Jalen Davis. And those guys, they really came to work every day, and they were determined to get better, and they were determined to prove the prognosticators wrong. And it's a shame, because I felt like we were building real momentum towards opening day in spring training, and it's a shame that it got cut short. But at least we have a template there for future spring trainings, and we kind of know what works, and we know what types of work and drills and energy the players really need to get better every day.
I assume you're not going to tell us about Yasiel Puig and whether you're really interested or not.
I don't know where that came from. I got a bunch of text messages from that tweet, as I'm sure you guys did. But there's a transaction freeze right now. We're not talking about any deals with agents or other teams or anything like that, because it seems like a fool's errand right now to work on transactions that we wouldn't be able to submit anyways.
There's a story about you that has become urban legend. I know, I could see the react. Would you like to clarify it, just because we get the record set straight because it sounds funny, but without the context, people don't know exactly what is going on. So you want me to set it up and you can pick it up, or you want to do the whole thing?
Sure. I actually don't know which one you're talking about.
So. I know. There's many of them. I only know of one, and this comes from a previous story. By the way, there's not a lot about you on the web. I don't know if you've gone to one of those companies that scrubs everything. It's hard to get a lot of intel on you.
Yeah, I think when you have a generic name like Scott Harris, it gets drowned out by all the other Scott Harrises on the internet.
I'm gonna change my name. I'm gonna make it much simpler. Anyway, so the story is a guy, was it ESPN, the magazine, that was doing a profile on you, and it happened to be at a game where you were with the Cubs, and you had a tradition where the team members or whatever, those in the organization, would eat bread or cake. It's kind of like the rally cake or rally bread, and so you're like stuffing your mouth with cake or bread. Well, I don't know. You pick it up. You were there. You're the guy.
Sure. So I'll provide some setup information. So when I took the job in Chicago, I was 25 years old. So I was the young guy among the leadership group there, and when you're the young guy, you're often the target of a lot of antics. And so Theo and Jed are known for a fraternity-like atmosphere in their front offices in Boston, San Diego, and Chicago. And so we had a lot of fun working in that front office. And we oftentimes, during some of the longer games, when we'd be in the jam suite, Theo or Jed or one of us would come up with a new way to sort of pass the time or engage in superstitious activity or whatnot. And it happened to be that one night, one of the ESPN writers was up in our suite, and there he was doing a profile on Theo, and he was just kind of sitting in the corner taking notes. And at one point, I'm trying to remember exactly what happened, but essentially we were down a few runs, and Theo made us start wagering what we would do to try to score some runs and win the game. And I should preface it by saying the players win the games. The antics in the jam suite have no effect on the actual game, but we convinced ourselves in the moment sometimes up there that it would. And a few of the things that happened up there were, eating bread, eating cake from the dessert cart. I think Theo was eating relish at one point, and it's just a fun way to keep it light up there and to pass the time, because I think people forget in these jobs you work 16, 17 hours a day with the same people, and so you got to find new ways to keep the atmosphere fun and inclusive. And Theo's excellent at that. I will say though, it got completely overblown, and it sounded like I was just sitting in the corner crushing carbs all the time, when in reality it was a joint effort among all of us. But I guess I'll just wear it because the ESPN guy started to write about me instead of everybody else.
I sure hope you weren't taking dessert items away from members of the media, because the food at the ballparks is what sustains them. The dessert cart in particular.
Yeah, I'm just glad that I have health benefits in case I have any complications from all this eating.
I think, Larry, you should tell Scott a story about baseball and eating as well.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think he told a story. I think you should tell a story.
It's only fair.
Yeah.
I actually have a great story about meeting Willie Mays for the first time.
Nope, we don't want to hear that one.
Can't avoid it, Larry.
I can't even pick my own story that I'm going to tell.
Maybe next round of questions you can go in on that. But
okay, yeah.
I have a specific one in mind, and I think you know what I'm talking about.
All right. Scott, you may not. I don't think Scott's going to find this entertaining at all.
It's not Scott's fault, by the way. Let's just
this is your time with the Giants, because Casey loves the A's, and before last season, I thought let's just make it interesting, and so he had owed me a foot-long sub from Safeway, which he was very slow to pay back, and so before the start of the season, I said, why don't we go? We'll go double or nothing on A's versus Giants wins, and so he gave me 15 wins to add to the Giants total. So I thought most of the season I was in pretty good shape, and then things went terribly wrong for the Giants and myself. And the tweak in the bet was the loser had to eat 2 foot-long meatball subs at one time.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So
Wow.
your organization nearly killed me, Scott. That's
Yeah, well, I will say another thing I deduced from that story is that you guys are betting on baseball these days. That's good.
Like the GMs and the executives in the suite, we have no impact on the game either. We are not the players. So I think it's safe for us to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
I think it's safe. All right. So Larry did mention, it is hard to get some information on you. And you mentioned it was because of your name. But I would like to do a quick lightning round, perhaps. So who was your favorite player growing up?
Sammy Sosa.
Sammy Sosa. Yeah, Cub. All right. What about what's your favorite TV show of all time?
Probably Seinfeld. I just watched it so many times.
Nice. Good choice. What about movie?
Gladiator?
That's a good one. That's a good one. What about music? Do you have a favorite musical artist or CD or CD? Wow, album that you've played the most of, perhaps?
Apropos of the previous or one of the previous questions, in these jobs you get to check off a lot of things on your bucket list, and fortunately Theo Epstein is really good friends with Eddie Vedder, so we got to hang out with him quite a bit, and so Pearl Jam has climbed up my list recently, and I find myself listening to them a lot.
Nice. That was the very first album I ever purchased was Pearl Jam's 10, so that's a good choice.
Yeah, awesome album.
I know people hate answering those questions, so I'll stop now.
I had a couple more. Favorite baseball movie.
Blame though.
The Natural.
Oh, The Natural.
Yeah.
Favorite road baseball park to go to outside of Oracle's now your home. So what's the second best one?
I like Pittsburgh a lot.
Mm.
It looks a lot like
downtown
Oracle.
And you walk across the Clemente Bridge. What a gorgeous setting that ballpark's in.
It's a good one. I actually spoke with Herm Edwards today, the Arizona State football coach. And when I got to that spring training that week, Gabe Kapler, the first thing he said was, Herm Edwards just spoke to us, and he spoke to the team. Were you in that meeting or speech? And if so, what was that like when Herm spoke to you guys?
I was not, actually. I was on a call during it, but I heard it was great. A lot of the players were talking about it afterwards.
Okay.
You play to win the game, Scott. I wonder how many times he's been asked to say that.
Right.
I didn't ask him today, but Scott, is there, one of the things that Herm said about what he said to the team, he's a lifelong Giants fan, but one of the things he said was that he reminded the guys to remember what it's like to put on the cap for the first time, and that you're always being watched, and there are little kids that want to be like you, or you're a role model, and to just kind of carry that passion into what you do every day, because, baseball is a short window. So what do you like about the makeup of the clubhouse and the guys that you have, a mix of veterans and young guys that can actually produce to winning on the field?
Yeah, I think you just nailed it right there. One of the more exciting elements of our clubhouse right now is we have a healthy mix of young guys and veterans. And I think, spring training was a great first test of how those two groups were going to blend together. And we were really energized by the way that certainly the young guys were making the most of the opportunity to learn from, iconic figures in this organization like Buster Posey, and trying to, learn from their sets of experiences about how to climb the mountain, not just once, but multiple times. And so we were very pleased that some of the rookies were making the most of the opportunity, but we're also very pleased that the veterans seemed to be feeding off the energy that the young guys were bringing. The young guys were in early every single day, and they were hitting hard in the gym, and they were out there doing extra work with Kai and Donnie and Justin and Dustin. And it really seemed to create a contagious approach to work that the veterans seemed to feed off of also. And I do remember instances where, veterans would be fighting with rookies to be the first one to participate in a new drill that one of the hitting coaches would implement in the cage, or that Kai would bring into infield work. And that's when that things are starting to stick, and that Gabe's approach to work and development at the major league level is really starting to resonate with the players. And so I think that's one of the dynamics that I'm looking forward to watching once we get back on the field, because I think that's going to bring out the most of both the veterans and the young guys.
It's a good place to wrap it up. We're just hoping that we get to see some actual baseball in the relative near future. It looks like things are heading in the right direction, and who knows? I know they're playing in Asia, no fan games, and so they're a couple months ahead of us with respect to the virus and how to slowly get back to whatever the new normal is. So hopefully we'll be able to actually do this in person at Oracle Park. And
absolutely, I'll bring the meatball subs.
Yeah. Now we're talking. I might be the one eating them now that you're with the Giants. You'll probably make me lose the next bet.
Man, I was going to say I can taste it, but I want him to taste it. Scott, thanks so much for your time, and hopefully we'll see you soon at a baseball, a park to be named later. All right?
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. That was fun.
With authority.